Buon pomeriggio a tutti e benvenuti.
Good afternoon. My name is Angela Tumino of the Milan Polytechnic, and I am a professor of logistics and special management at the Polytechnic. Well, Riccardo Mangiaracina, who together with me founded this center together with me and others, but both he and Arianna are not well, and so today they've been unable to stay with us today. We have 90 minutes. We have many things we'd like to discuss on this subject that is linked to the sustainability of e-commerce. And sometimes, not always saying what should be said. Well, the event will be subdivided into two parts. First, we'll be considering all the sectors, speaking about the impact and the logistics when we're dealing with sustainability, with the sustainability approach. And then the second part will be chaired by Chiara Siragusa, that will focus on food and grocery. And here again, we'll have other panelists that are, well, the names are all here on the first slide. And immediately, let's speak, well, we have these announcements that, of course, are very difficult to go through. Never mind. Environmental sustainability linked to logistics for e-commerce must move from the analysis of the e-commerce in Italy to understand what are the figures we are talking about. This is our observatory, the B2C observatory. You see a strong growth. Then there was a slowdown in 2020 that was linked to the reduction in the sale of services due to the decrease of tourism because of the pandemics. But you see that the e-commerce in Italy has been developing year after year in Italy. And we must sort of analyze this number to understand what is the growth of the product e-commerce, because originally e-commerce essentially had to do with services, but now we tend to rather to speak about products. So parcels we have to handle, to carry, so that they can reach their destination. That is why sustainability is so important. And so the number, essentially the number of parcels is not so much a matter of quantities, but really of numbers. So let's try and give you a sort of summary. At the territorial level, well, there is a strong focus. More than half of the e-commerce market in Italy takes place in the north of Italy. If we consider the growth, considering the number of parcels, 578,000 parcels being moved. So the volumes are quite impressive. Well, why? Why is it so important when we speak about sustainability in e-commerce and logistics? And why is it so important to specify that we are talking about e-commerce? Because e-commerce has a number of features that have an impact on logistics and that are extremely relevant both on economic sustainability and environmental sustainability. What are the specificities? I'll try and list the main ones. First of all, the time. So the interval of time between the e-commerce order and the moment when the customer wants to receive his or her order. So these are far more binding than those of more traditional logistics. Another element, what are we carrying? Unfortunately, well, of course, we don't have pallets any longer. These are small parcels And in many sectors, they just contain one item or very few items. So this has, of course, a terrible impact on the management of the activity as such. And so this a part of the purchasing process is up to the consumer, the picking and also the transport home, or something that the consumer does. In e-commerce, this is no longer the case, because in many cases the picking is carried out in a warehouse, and in many cases the parcel must be taken to the customer's home. So there are many activities that are to be carried out. Another element pertains to the type of orders. In a traditional shop, well, we tend to have very long hours, but there are times when the shop is closed, whereas e-commerce never stops, and it has peaks. Precisely when it is more complicated to manage orders, for example, during the weekend, or orders that are formulated in the evening, because it is rather in the evening that consumers tend to concentrate their online purchases. And so there is a clear question now, to what extent can this be sustainable, and whether from the environmental viewpoint, this can be considered environmentally sustainable. And we keep reading and also we listen on TV to all this news, and there they focus on some of the activities rather than on the whole. We have examined the phenomenon in with a sort of wider approach to try and understand all the processes that are involved in supporting e-commerce versus traditional purchases. And we wanted to measure the impact in terms of CO2, and so to have a scientific comparison, a comparison based on scientific data. First of all, it is very difficult to give an answer, because the factors affecting those numbers are very many, and I'm going to deal with them later. Well, first of all, let's compare the online and offline purchasing process. And so we are not focusing on the moment of the final destination, but sale, pre-sale, restocking of warehouses, picking, and also preparation of the parcel and consignment. And so to have a real comparison between the two channels, we needed a number of inputs and also an estimate of times for the different activities, the specifications of vehicles and warehouses, the type of vehicle that is being used for this transport, for this shipment, so mid-mile, last mile, and we have put everything in this sort of mixer. That is how we call our model, and in order to reach some conclusion, well, some preliminary consideration, because of course they have an impact on results. First of all, we have considered medium and big shops in urban areas, because this is one of the elements, of course, that have an impact, with a consignment density 40 orders in about 80 kilometers, and then the type of order. Well, to make a comparison, we had to have people were buying exactly the same things, and then home delivery is done with traditional vehicles. Of course, this might be different if we are using electrical vehicles. Traditional packaging and physical shops were, let's say 1 kilometer away from his home. that, of course, would apply to traditional shops. So these are important elements. What have we seen? Three different sectors: garments, electronics, and books publishing. And in the three cases, e-commerce is more sustainable from the environmental viewpoint if compared to traditional purchases. And this is linked to a number of factors. And first of all, that we have, well, our hypothesis was that of a given density in these consignments, whereas to buy an item, the individual consumer must go to the individual shop. Well, what changes if we change one of the hypotheses? In the traditional purchase, you go out, you go to a shop and you buy a product, but as is often the case, I mean, you would go out and go shopping, and so you would go to three different shops. And so here we considered this overall shopping activity. And if we consider this hypothesis, and if we take into consideration a small, medium shop, well, in this case, traditional shopping is more sustainable. If we have a small, medium shop, but the customer must go further away, especially if we are out of the main cities, well, in that case, the online shopping becomes more sustainable, but there is a decrease in terms of advantage. If we are speaking of larger shops with a trip that is 4 kilometers, well, the online shopping becomes more sustainable. Of course, you might have a variety of figures because the variables will combine in a number of ways. I don't want to play the engineer, always answering it depends. It depends on the choices, of course, because by doing that, you can also guide the choices of your company, but also trying to guide the choices of the consumer vis-a-vis shopping behaviors that may prove to be more sustainable. If we want to summarize what has a significant impact on that, well, offline, well, and online, well, the small shop around the corner or the large commercial center, or what sort of order we are talking about, both in the traditional shopping or online. Is it the individual product, more products? Of course, that has a significant impact. Another element is the consumer's habit, how he or she carries out this online shopping. Then later on, with the focus on grocery, we'll see other aspects. The consumer, if the consumer goes out, if he or she goes on foot to go shopping, well, of course, the results are to the advantage of traditional shopping. So much depends upon the consumer's behavior, but also the area is very important in terms of density of consignments and length of the route that has to be followed by the consumer. Of course, if you are in downtown Milan, it is obviously different than if you are in the periphery or in the countryside.
Well, what can logistics providers do in this regard? Well, they can work on many different fronts. First of all, working on the so-called last mile delivery, middle mile deliveries, warehousing, transportation, as well as working on the sustainability and efficiency of the whole network. They might also work on internal processes and packaging. Packaging can have a significant impact in this regard, and it partially explains the facts and figures I shared with you earlier. Moreover, we have to consider reverse logistics, which is very typical of clothing and apparel industry, because the rate of reverse logistics in this industry is quite significant. Innovation, meaning a service, technological innovation, may have a key role. Let me share with you a couple of examples with regards to the last mile delivery portion, which is one of the most influential elements. There are a host of solutions currently available in the market. Others are mushrooming. The parts and locker solutions are gathering momentum, and for sure they can contribute to the efficiency as well as the sustainability of the online network. We're also discussing the use of cargo bikes or e-cargo bikes as alternate delivery methods, or for example the cash and carry, or for example delivery in the trunks of the cars. That might bridge the gap in case of absence of the buyer in his or her dwellings. And then we have computerized and automated solutions that are currently being piloted. On a parallel basis, we also addressed the subject of e-cars, e-vans, and hydrogen-powered vehicles. To wrap it up, and in an attempt to summarize some of the highlights I shared with you during my presentation, well, let me say that several decisions are to be made in order to have a positive impact in terms of environmental sustainability by all of the stakeholders. And we have to come down to a compromise, I would argue. So identify the best balance between environmental sustainability, efficiency, and I mean financial efficiency, as well as efficacy. In other words, to cater to the needs cascading from the different service levels demanded by clients. And I'd be happy to share views and opinions with the next panelists. So this was some sort of an initial address, and I hope it was fruitful food for thinking. I would like to invite the first panelists, and they will certainly help me to expand on some of the elements that I tabled during my presentation. Marco Lazzarotti, welcome Marco. Account and Logistics B2C Italy at Decathlon Italy. Welcome. Please have a seat. Gabriele Sigismondi, Country Director at Amazon Logistics Italy. Welcome. Andrea Sperati, Product Industries and E-commerce Manager at DHL. Welcome. Well, thanks very much for joining us, and let's give them a big hand. I would like to start with you, Marco, if you don't mind. I attempted at giving a short overview about the different initiatives that are focusing on sustainability in the e-commerce domain. From your own perspective, what initiatives have you already rolled out in this regard in order to improve the environmental sustainability of Decathlon Logistics? Good afternoon, everyone. And based on your presentation, I realize that the number of parcels keeps rising, and this is good news. But of course, we have to turn it into something that is more sustainable. And starting from last year, we decided to phase out plastics. In fact, we went from plastic bags to paper bags, and filling materials are exclusively made of paper. And we also reuse some of the cardboard boxes that come in through returns for filling materials. We also banned plastic adhesive tapes with paper tapes. This with regards to packaging solutions. Alongside that, we are also striving to eliminate packaging whenever possible. We do provide home deliveries, of course, but most of our goods end up in our stores. And our stores are used by clients to pick up their purchases. And so we're really asking ourselves whether it makes sense for those orders that are funneled to our stores to package our products, because most of our clients go to the teller, pay for the goods, and then they don't want the packaging to take home with them. And so we're really considering the possibility of delivering without packaging through reusable containers from warehouse to the store, and the end customer will receive the product without packaging materials. So this is something we're currently working on. The other subject we worked on in order to reduce packaging is process automation. And we do that by way of two machines. One is for all products like fishing rods, skis, that are outside of standard sizes. And so we had to use different sizes of cardboards in order to fit the oversized product. And so we decided to purchase a machine that identifies the size of the product, cuts the cardboard, and then there is a worker that seals the cardboard box. And so internal goods are well wrapped up, and so we managed to minimize our packaging. And in addition to that, for standard items, we will be setting up a machine that automatically recognizes the single or multi-order, silhouettes the cardboard box, and then sends it automatically to the wrapping machine. And so we think we will reduce the volume of the packaging, and we also reduce the packaging materials proper. Well, I would like to hand it over to Gabriele. What are you doing at Amazon with regards to sustainability promoting initiatives? Good afternoon, everyone. We're doing a lot of things to promote sustainability in Amazon. Back in 2017, our company, together with 300 businesses, created a cluster of companies that put forward the so-called climate pledge in order to reach zero emissions 10 years before the Paris Agreement by 2040. So this was the first initiative that we pursued ahead of times, I would say. With regards to Italy alone, we want to hit 50% of our deliveries emitting zero emissions by the end of 2030. This initiative is called Shipment Zero, and we intend to pursue this goal. As of today, we've reached a significant number in this regard. In 2021, we delivered over 100 million parcels at zero emissions. In Italy, 7 million at zero emissions. This means that for the whole value chain, from central warehousing, central warehouse that creates the product down to the home delivery. So this means that we're using wind power or sun power. In our warehouses, we also use robots that have very low CO2 emissions, and we've also optimized our transportation pathways. When we reach the either middle mile or last mile, we use high efficiency vehicles. With regards to trucks and lorries, we are still struggling a bit with e-vehicles because we would need several tons of battery capacity in order to have a thorough line or network with several kilometers of autonomy. And we entered into a special agreement with Iveco with over 2,700 methane powered tractors for us and our suppliers. In addition to that, we have to consider also oversized trucks. And obviously, since we need to drive, we need to travel those vehicles, we have to do it in the best possible way, either with electricity or with hydrogen. So with regards to our articulated lorries, the pressure of the wheels should be ideal. And maybe you've seen them. I'm talking about the blue trucks. And you see that on the sides there are what we call Formula One skirts that make the entire flow very sustainable. And there is also an automatic inflating system. And so, as stated, we also have 2,700 units that are put at the disposal of our entire network. As to Amazon Logistics, we are also responsible for the last mile. And in this case, we have to have maximum capacity. Having vans or trucks that are half empty is a pity. And so we need to optimize technology in this regard. Every itinerary is fully optimized. Our drivers are equipped with palm devices that calculate the optimal route to get from point A to point B. And as to our fleet, well, we already have 2,900 e-vehicles all over Europe, Italy included. And you probably spotted them. There are the blue vans, and some of them are e-vans and trucks. And so we hit zero emissions in this regard when it comes to home deliveries. And we also have intelligent collection points such as smart lockers and also smart deliveries, so that at the very first attempt we can reach the end customer. So our goal in this regard is 98% in order to reduce pollution. So as you can tell, we are pursuing a lot of initiatives, and at the end of this decade 50% of our deliveries will be zero emission deliveries. Well, thanks very much, Gabriele, and I'm sure we can go back to this point later on. Andrea, over to you, Product Industries and E-commerce Manager at DHL. So what are you pursuing in terms of sustainability promoting initiatives? Good afternoon, everyone. At DHL, we rolled out the sustainability roadmap in an attempt to reduce emissions and to foster well-being in our company. And by 2050, we are aiming to hit zero emissions, and we're pursuing governance, corporate social responsibility goals, and environmental sustainability objectives. We've set some goals by 2030 so that our fleet can use more efficient and more sustainable vehicles. We've signed special agreements with some partners. We have purchased 800,000 liters of green fuel, and we will be using that for our branch offices in San Francisco and Amsterdam. And pretty soon we will have them over here in Italy as well. We invested also 7 billion euros over the course of the past 10 years, next 10 years, in order to invest in sustainability. And we want to bump up the number of e-vehicles by 60% by 2030. And we have implemented some hands-on projects as well in terms of branch offices. For example, our Malpensa Airport Hub, which was opened up in 2019, and it is LEED certified. This is a certification program that is evidence of the fact that we used green materials for building purposes and pursued energy efficiency projects. We digitalized some of the processes there, and we enabled to cut down on our consumption of energy and water. And so that hub is indeed very energy advanced. And in an attempt to increase the number of e-vehicles, we installed the battery charging columns and also solar panels for energy production. So this is what we are doing. On a global scale, we plant approximately 1 million trees in order to offset our emissions, and we're going to follow suit and keep it up.
So really a very high number of initiatives. And I'd like to go back to you, Marco, for a second round of considerations. I close speaking about the challenges, and now, I set the scene, but now you must help us understand what are the true challenges, sustainability, of course, and also looking at the future. So not only what has been done so far, but also what you are going to be in the future, and what are the key elements you're supposed to be working on to face these challenges. What are the challenges of the future in terms of sustainability? Well, we have two main challenges. Let's say the most important ones are, first of all, finding the appropriate balance between the speed of delivery and sustainability. We know that we must become faster and faster, but there are many customers who also want to be sustainable. And so we decided to face these two challenges, being fast and being sustainable. So we have a second platform in Italy, we have an e-commerce platform in Milan, and now we have a second one in Caserta. It is an automated platform enabling us to be faster for customers in the south of Italy and the center of Italy. It is true that the north accounts for 57%, but the center and the south have been growing and being faster, because now we have parcels moving from Caserta, and in doing that, thanks to that platform, we save from between 6 and 12 hours in lead time. But it's not just a matter of time, it's also a matter of kilometers, because on average, a parcel leaving Caserta and going to the center or the south of Italy, we have estimated moving from Caserta, it is about 600 kilometers. Of course, it is a lot if you consider the million of items. We have saved in terms of time, but also in terms of CO2, and then automation. Also, thanks to GB, we have automated a lot, and there is a process efficiency, but also saving in terms of square meters, because thanks to these robots, we saved some 30% of space for logistics, and space is important because when we speak about cost, but also when we speak environmental impact, we know very well that in urban areas, when you get close to the cities, of course, it's also an important saving in terms of environment protection. This with regard to this balance to be created between speed and sustainability. The other challenge is returns. You mentioned it before. Well, we have higher and higher returns in the online world, and these returns, of course, are a cost for the company because it's a sort of reverse process, and of course, sometimes the stocks cannot be sold again. It is not a lot, but in most of it is sold anyway because there may be problems of size or other aspects. But in other cases, it is because the packaging was opened, and so it is impossible for us to sell these things again. And by 2025, we have decided to eliminate these processes, these products. So reconditioning of the products. Well, the example of bikes, well, we started last year on bikes, and today I can say that, in fact, 0 bikes are destroyed. They are all reconditioned. Our workers have really changed their job specifications. They are not so much logistical people, they are lab technicians, lab mechanics. They assess the bike or they change some items, some spare parts, so that the bike can be sold again and it has a new life. We no longer destroy bikes, and now the objective is by 2025 to have a zero destruction of the products that come back, that are returned. So there is a balance between environmental sustainability but also economic sustainability. Now it is no longer a cost, but is a sort of business. It is a second hand, especially much on demand by new generations. Thank you, Marco. I go back to you. Well, you have told us quite a few things, important objectives linked to zero emissions. From your viewpoint as well, what are the challenges and how are they to be faced? Well, of course, the challenges are very many, but the most important thing, if you are the company manager, is that we are all quite convinced that electrical vehicles have not developed so much that you can say that if you make an important investment, that technology is not going to develop. So you must be very brave to buy electrical fleet that you know very well that will become obsolete in a couple of years. And this is something you must take into account. This technology is constantly evolving. I'm not an expert, of course, in this sector, but I'm afraid this is the feeling I have. This is important because, well, the entrepreneur will be waiting before buying something. And also the renting solution is not so easy. There is not such an availability. We keep speaking about electrical vehicles, but there is this practical obstacle. And other obstacles is that vehicles must be recharged. So you must have parking facilities that must be completely different from those we have at present. I'm speaking in general. We don't have this yards. At present, the trucks are being parked in small parking spaces all around our delivery stations. But if you have a fully electrical fleet, you can no longer do that. You have to park vehicles in places where there are the recharging stations. And then you must have a power station, and it's not something trivial. I mean, and sometimes, you know, the space you need to have this parking lot is twice as much than the one you really need, because the driver gets there with his private car and then he's going to drive the truck. So it is a pretty important investment in terms of real estate. estate. And if we are speaking of the last mile, well, of course, we are very close to the urban centers, so the real estate cost is quite impressive. And so these are important challenges, and sometimes they are not considered, or not as much as they should, or not as seriously as we might want. This having said, well, Amazon last year invested, we invested a lot in electric fleet. The vehicle you showed before is a Ridian. We bought 100,000 vehicles such as that one, and they will become operational before before the end of this decade, and the first vehicles will get to Italy very shortly. But we had really to be very, very brave, because it is the largest purchase of an electrical fleet ever done in the world. But you know also very well that that technology maybe will be overcome very soon, or will be difficult to manage. And the aspect of the parking lots is also extremely important. Thank you. Well, today we can discuss about it, but there is a debate also on the management of batteries. We don't have the time to discuss it today, but if you want to say something, please, you're welcome. Well, sustainable and consistently sustainable, because if you go electric, but then to manufacture the vehicle, or to manage or what the vehicle leaves behind, and then your pollution is higher than what you have saved. Of course, you'd be hypocritical. You're doing absolutely nothing. It's just marketing actions, and that is something not to be forgotten. Thank you. And in closing, same question to you, Andrea. You mentioned very important objectives, very challenging objectives for DHL. What are the challenges from your standpoint? Well, the greatest challenge is putting together environmental sustainability and economic sustainability. Sustainability has a cost. Buying planes that are less noisy, that respect the environment. Well, of course, that has a long-term cost. Research tells us that the intention to invest in eco-sustainability by consumer is there. We work with many industries, and there is this trend. We are moving towards this type of system. Maybe not all areas, not all sectors are ready, but in my opinion, the greatest challenge is pushing our yellow car to all industries, so that we can all support the same ideas, the same approach. Thank you very much indeed to the three of you, to our three panelists. And now, first of all, big clap of hands for all of you. And we welcome Chiara Siragusa, that now will chair the next part of the conference. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Angela, and good afternoon, everyone. So let's move into the second part of our conference, and we're going to be focusing on the e-grocery industry. So why did we decide to put emphasis on this industry in particular? If you look at this chart, given the impact of the pandemic in the past few years, starting from 2019, the market size of the e-grocery has tripled and has hit one of the highest growth rates in the vis-a-vis other industries. And let's see why e-grocery is so peculiar vis-à-vis other industries? Well, first of all, let's start with the order, the number of items per order. In grocery, we reach 60, 70, even 80 items in a single order, which does not happen in other industries, because on average, we're talking about just a handful of items, one or two, for example. Moreover, we have to consider fragility, because there are a lot of products in e-grocery that are very fragile, and hence they need to be handled with care. Another important element that needs to be considered, and that tells e-grocery apart from other industries, is delivery. When we speak of e-grocery, in fact, deliveries are made within certain time bands, time slots, and the fixed time of a delivery of a certain order is a bit broader. So in the same round of deliveries, we can deliver a significant higher number of parcels compared to other industries. Another distinctive element is the type of products in e-grocery. We have fresh and frozen products requiring temperature-controlled vehicles, and we know very well that this has an impact in terms of environmental sustainability. I mentioned fresh food a while ago. Well, with regards to fresh produce, being part of one's shopping list somehow, they must have nearby fulfillment centers or fulfillment points where the client resides. And this has an important impact on logistics. So let's have a look at the key logistic model supporting the e-grocery industry. Well, we have physical stores in the traditional channel, and such stores can be used in order to shop, and the stock will be shared between online and offline channels. Again, speaking of stores, there are also solutions where typically in the back of the store there is an area devoted to high rotation or high stock revolving products. And the other solution could be that of the dark store. In other words, this is a designated facility similar to that of a store that is not used for offline customers. And then we have some hybrid solutions, like pickups can be carried out in dark stores, or finish up shopping in stores. And this might happen when the dark store is not equipped with all the different areas, hence they need to be integrated by stores. And the last solution would be that of a warehouse. So in the warehouse, we might have some automation solutions so that we may not see in all the rest of the case scenarios we've just described. And this is for picking and preparation and assembly of the order. So here we have click and collect. So the client goes to the point of sale to pick the shopping up, and there could be different configurations in this regard, like, for example, clients who must step into the store or point of sale, or, for example, the click and drive solution. So the client doesn't even get out of the car, and the car is put into the car trunk, or the parcel locker solution. The more conventional solution, the second one I mentioned, is the home delivery solution. So the typical van that drives the clients shopping directly to their homes. we've looked at a general overview of the key logistic models that support e-grocery. And the topic of today's conference is environmental sustainability. So we may wonder, what is the environmental impact of all these different models? In the previous presentation, Angela described a model that we described at the B2C Logistics Center. Given a series of parameters, the model estimates the environmental impact of a specific process. And we have focused on the grocery industry, namely e-grocery, and we will be sharing with you only some of the models we've investigated so far. If we take, for example, for comparative purposes, the offline purchase, so the traditional purchasing process, and we want to compare it vis-a-vis the dark store solution and the in-store picking solution, both for home deliveries and click and collect deliveries. The quantification that you will see is considered from the replenishment point of the stores and of the dark store. So the process described in the slide is part of our quantitative analysis. So let's have a look at the results. So let's start from the case of a traditional purchase. So emissions in case of in-store picking with a click and collect delivery option, we see that emissions are slightly higher, plus 5%. So it is a slight increase in emissions compared to an offline purchase. If we look at the home delivery model, we see that these emissions start decreasing by, say, 50%. If we instead look at the dark store model, you see that emissions decrease even more. So we formulated several hypotheses, and as Angela stated in her presentation, there are a lot of factors that contribute to these results. In addition to that, we wanted to work with a hypothetical scenario, like we know that the client usually drives a car, and we know that a car generates emissions. And so we asked ourselves the following question: what might happen if we don't consider client-related emissions? Either, for example, the client is walking to the store, or hypothetically speaking, there is no designated route to the supermarket. So if you look at offline purchases, we have a minus 20% in emissions, and so this is definitely more impactful compared to other channels. So if we look at the dark store, emissions break even. As to the stores, we see that there is a slight emission increase. As I stated earlier, there are a lot of contributing factors, as Angela reminded us, factors that contribute to these results. For example, urban, suburban areas, and also it depends significantly on purchasing behaviors. So what can e-grocery operators do in order to reduce the environmental impact related to this purchasing process? Out of all the potential solutions that are already on the way, the first thing that pops to mind is the use of green vehicles or electric vehicles, to be more specific. And this is a solution to reduce the environmental impact. The second option would be the use of environmental packaging solutions, and there are a lot of options out there that can help us reduce the environmental impact related to the use of packaging materials. Third up, we can optimize deliveries by way of algorithms such as the one of the so-called dynamic pricing that expands the density of each shipment in order to reduce the impact of each delivery. So the results we have gathered so far with regards to the environmental impact analysis we conducted, since we were comparing these data vis-à-vis traditional in-store shopping, so literally a client that goes to a store, well, they mostly pertain to the traditional operators of the e-grocery industry. However, in this market scenario, some newcomers are coming to the market, and we're going to discuss this during the second panel discussion. We tried to describe from the consumer's standpoint the models that are applicable to the current market scenarios. We tried to map them based on the type of service in terms of speed of delivery, range of products, and price positioning. Starting with traditional operators or so-called full grocery players, we see that a pretty broad range of products, a pretty competitive price compared to the so-called flash grocery entities, that is to say, the speedy delivery in less than 60 minutes. The third cluster that we represented is a sort of a middle, an intermediate position. So you see, we have the fast grocery. The delivery is made in, say, 2 hours to the client's home. So we decided to analyze these data in order to give a general overview about the various logistics models that support the e-grocery industry in an attempt to quantify the environmental impact of each and every one of them. I would like to invite the guests and the panelists for the next discussion. Andrea Lovato, Operations Directors at Gorillas. Thank you very much. Salvatore Pitera, Head of E-commerce USA, Italy. Davide Zonda, E-commerce and large-scale retail trade specialist. Well, first of all, thanks very much for joining us. I would like to start with this question that basically recaps on what was discussed by the first panel discussion. So what are the key environmental sustainability initiatives that your company is pursuing? And I would like to start with Andrea Lovato from Gorillas. Good afternoon, everyone. Gorillas means e-grocery quick commerce. In other words, is a community grocery shop that is digitalized by way of an app. So clients order through the app a series of produce and receive the shopping list to their dwelling in, say, 10 minutes. And the distance is typically 1 to 2 kilometers, and so we have a pretty limited product range, and we deliver by means of e-bikes in a matter of minutes. Speaking of sustainability, sustainability is the key characteristic of our business model. First of all, we use electric bikes, zero impact, and e-cargo bikes and e-mopeds. So it's possible to deliver the shopping swiftly with zero emissions, literally. With regards to our real estate, we're using dark stores. So in other words, clients cannot go to the point of sale, and they're not optimized to admit a significant number of buyers. So they're not configured for this purpose. in order to avoid that clients would drive there with vehicles that are not environmentally friendly. And it's a quick commerce e-grocery. So with regards to the last mile, we don't have cancellations in that, like deliveries that go defaulted, because it happens in a matter of minutes. And there is no reverse logistics, so basically no returns that we know can cause lack of efficiency. In terms of packaging, we use paper wrappings, paper bags, and other sustainable materials. We're testing out other materials in order to be able to reuse the packaging material after they're being sanitized. Well, thank you very much. Salvatore, Italy. Again, same question to you. What are the key environmental sustainability initiatives that your company is pursuing? Good afternoon, everyone. Italy's core business revolves around the selection of products and produce that are sustainable across the whole supply chain, starting from the sourcing of our produce as well as labor. With regards to e-commerce, well, it's actually nothing new to us, but all logistics-related processes in terms of packaging and in terms of e-delivery, well, all of these make it possible for us to optimize our flows and to minimize our environmental footprint. We started out as a conventional, quote-unquote, e-commerce operator. Our core business is not in e-commerce. We are retailers, and so we don't have a comparable outreach to that of other retailers in the industry. But still, we had a central warehouse that dispatched goods to the rest of Italy and abroad. And obviously, it is more affordable, but we didn't invent anything. We simply didn't reinvent the wheel. And we also selected a series of partners and we adopted a series of software solutions in order to provide our clients with the best possible delivery option depending on their geographical residence or position. We also use stores that are special ones. Our sites are very, very special ones. So they weren't designed to be supermarkets. So the logistics optimization efforts we have deployed over the years have paid off, really. As to packaging solutions, well, at times, a sustainable decision implies the decision not to sell certain products online, and that's a pity. However, we realize that there are products that come with very fragile packaging options, and so the product wouldn't reach the end consumer in satisfactory conditions. And in order to do so, we would have to opt for over-packaging. And so in this case, we may decide to strike that product from our sale portfolio. So again, this is a decision that we decide to make. And our clients are very heedful, very attentive when it comes to sustainability. And so that's why we are also cautious in this regard.
Great, thank you. And now give the floor to Davide, who is an expert in the sector. What are the sustainability initiatives that, in your opinion, should be given priority by large-scale retail trade? Well, in my opinion, these are the things that they are supposed to face, and then, of course, they might concentrate on them. Well, for large-scale retail trade, if they want also to extend their activity to the e-commerce, there are three areas essentially. Well, first of all, development. Well, Well, 15 years ago, Tesco in the UK had declared that its development in terms of opening of outlets was determined the development of the e-commerce channel. Now, well, of course, there are many supermarkets being created everywhere, especially in the north of Italy, but opening a supermarket has cost and also a use of land. Opening a drugstore has an impact that is completely different, and also on the organization of expenditure, but that is a more philosophical one. Then there are other two aspects that are extremely operational. First of all, transport. So how the shopping in a drugstore or in a store must be delivered at home, and then packaging. Well, transport today, you must have ecological vehicles, electrical vehicles have been mentioned, and the colleague from Amazon also expressed some of the ideas on what the development is going to be, because it is not so obvious. I mean, delivery, well, it's not easy to move heavy loads with electric vehicles, and also when we speak about refrigerator transport, because in some cases you need cold also on the electrical vehicle, and that again requires power. So electrical in the grocery sector, in the e-commerce of the grocery sector, is being tested, but still at a very initial phase. And then packaging. Well, we all had the experience of shopping in a supermarket. You reach the cash, and the shopping must be placed in the bags, and then you separate, you sort the shopping. Can you imagine all this in a drugstore with the shopping that must be delivered at home? And eggs, for example, it means eggs and a wine bottle in glass, and a plastic bottle, and a bag of chips, or 100 grams of raw ham. So packaging linked to transport is a very, very difficult aspect. Thank you, Davide, for all these suggestions. We have a second round of questions, and the first goes to Andrea. We asked the panelists to tell us, to give us in one sentence, what for you, for your reference company, is environmental sustainability for you. So going back to your sentence, so what is the approach of Gorillas on sustainability? Well, we must be pioneers in the quick commerce sector for environmental sustainability. Well, two aspects. The main revolution is not only our business model, but also consumer education to a type of approach that is based on a fuller awareness that is very different from the present, or I don't know, the American model, hypermarket, huge supermarkets, giant trolleys to be filled in with these huge boxes, because all consumers are attracted by saving, buying as much quantities, as huge quantities as possible, products that are in fact are not consumed in 1 week. So customers buy more, and then of course this leads to waste, because of course then the deadlines expire. So our idea is that a consumer may also live without a refrigerator at home, so the ingredients come for today's supper or for tomorrow's dinner. So you prepare them immediately, and you don't have to stock these products at home, products that are not really useful and that can deteriorate. So our business model leads to a reduction of waste also at the selling outlet, sales outlet, so we can be very precise and stock the exact quantities of the products that are distributed in daily orders, avoiding waste of fresh products that perimate or get deteriorated. If we want to be sustainable as sustainable companies, both in terms of waste and also sustainability in the use of vehicles and also socially sustainable activities, for example, distributing products that are reaching their shelf life to charities, and using also plastic bags that can be used by different consumers or brought back. So all these initiatives leading to a more sustainable outlook to our future. Thank you, Andrea. And now, Salvatore, going back to the evocative sentence you gave us, optimization is sustainability, economic and environmental sustainability. It is what we have been saying. Where there is a waste, there is a loss of resources. So optimizing, reducing that waste already means that you are going towards sustainability. We do the same delivery that we would have from the central warehouse rather from the store. Well, we reduce costs and we also avoid waste. And wherever possible, we use the same packaging that we use in the shop. So what reaches the customer has no difference in terms of packaging vis-a-vis what he would be doing in the store. And we use also part of the packaging because the supply line is much shorter, so we can reuse containers, for example, for delivering fresh food. And also we can have a wider range of products. When we started, for example, we wouldn't offer fresh products. We're not sending a mozzarella to Rome. It is self-explanatory. I mean, it is not an objective. It's not sustainable and it's not feasible. Whereas if in some cases you may have a product a fresh product, a different fresh product that can be considered more sustainable for the whole supply chain. So when we optimize, we already, when we reduce waste, we are already making a sustainable choice. The customers are increasingly aware. We have had feedbacks from our customers because on some months of the year we were over packaging our products. So our customers are fully aware. So he or she makes choices on companies that invest on sustainable choices. So being sustainable is of course is something that makes your customer happier, at least today. Thank you, Salvatore. Davide. Well, now let's speak about this relationship between economic and environmental sustainabilities. And this is the sentence that we asked you. Home delivery in Italy. A challenge that we won because the grocery market in Italy, vis-a-vis the rest of the world, was sort of slow because all operators were quite doubtful in approaching this channel because the costs are very high. Because if you do that in a supermarket, but then a supermarket, once it's finished, you just open the doors, and then the work is being carried out by customers. Whereas in online shopping, costs are grow in line with the amount of customers. So more trips you must do, more shopping you deliver at home. So there is an increasing of cost that is exponential. Thanks to the pandemics, many companies reached the break-even level. And essentially they won the challenge. The initial investment was paid back through the volumes that were sold due to the need by customers due to the pandemics. Which means that the costs are reduced with volumes, and the volumes are made with dark stores, for example, where you have massive shoppings, and it is a 360 degrees cycle. They avoid building a supermarket, and they build a store that is less expensive, so less occupation of land, and a greater rationalization of processes in the warehouse if compared to the store. And then packaging. If you have, you may find automated solutions if you have a sufficient number of customers. In the fair, I've seen a lot of automation. Automation is a great investment by the operator, but the results are certainly very important in terms of optimization. And transport, we've seen it also in your presentations. If the strips are optimized, if the trucks are filled up, the CO2 emissions then go down. An e-commerce truck of large-scale retail, this is different. I'm speaking of traditional large-scale retail trade. A truck carries between 13 and 17 different shoppings, which means 13 or 17 cars less of customers going to the supermarket. If the truck is an ecological one or is a last generation, that is an advantage vis-a-vis cars of customers that would go to the supermarket. Up to the last mile, everything must be checked. Also the truck that brings the delivery home. Thank you. Many ideas, and you have dealt with all the subjects we have been discussing. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for this 90 minutes together. Angela, I give you the floor now. We close our session. Thank you very much indeed, and we hope to see you again soon, and I hope you will enjoy the fair. Thank you.